So we are live on Twitch, but not on YouTube, it looks like. Ah, there is a separate link. So we have the same problem again.
Look at my chat, Luke. The private chat, please.
Oh. So, I think we're still waiting for people to join this stream instead of the other one.
And we are live. So welcome everyone who's watching the stream today. And Luke, can you give us a brief of what we're going to talk about today?
Yes, sure, definitely, Eric. So, it has been a week now until the multiplayer game jam has started. We have seen some great progress from you guys in the showcase channel, so keep it up, everyone. And now we're sure you have many questions to ask. We're here to answer them. You can ask anything about Photon or multiplayer or just the jam in general. Today with me here is Eric from Photon and Charlie from the Global Game Jam. So we are ready to answer all your questions.
Luke, I think it's nice also to post the new YouTube link in all of the channels because it seems that Restream posted at the wrong YouTube event again. So we need to fix that before we get anybody live.
Yep, I'm on it.
I'm also searching here if I find the actual. Okay, this is the right event now.
So people are slowly starting to come in. So
Great.
again, to everyone coming in, we're here today to answer your questions live about Photon multiplayer. You can just ask in the Twitch or YouTube chat, and we're here to answer them for you.
Okay, see more people joining on YouTube here. Let's just wait for the questions.
Until then, I think we can go over some other stuff that has happened this week, right, Eric? So we had quite a big release. What was that about, Eric?
Yeah, we had quite a week with the launch of the official launch of the 200 player battle royale sample using Photon Fusion. We've had already a few interesting streams related to the game jam itself, like the previous one we did on which technology to choose between using determinism or using state transfer for creating multiplayer. And I think it's cool if you could also announce what's next besides today's Q&A Ask Me Anything session.
Yes, sure. We have much more planned. Next week, we're going to have some live development sessions where we're going to join you guys in the jam, do a little bit of development with both Fusion and Quantum. You will see live how to use those tools. We will go over tips and tricks, do some implementations. For Fusion, we are going to show how to do animations, how to use area of interest. So that's network calling. And for Quantum, we're gonna show you something very interesting that's unique to Quantum, where we will show you how to implement the bot. And actually, we just got the first question here. Um,
Okay, that's an interesting one, right? I'll repeat the question here on the stream because maybe people on Twitch that cannot see because this came from a comment on YouTube. So the question is, I was wondering how would be the best use of bots price be judged? Is this already defined? I believe this is something that the judges of the competition part of the gem are actually responsible for, not us who deal with the technical questions. But I'd like to, Charlie, are you involved with this or not?
No.
Not really, right?
So
Yeah.
just so that Global Game Jam is completely neutral. We're not involved in any of the prizes or prize assignments.
Yeah. I think I'd like to comment on that topic because I'll try to dive on into bots as well, but I'd like to comment on that topic a bit because I'm a veteran on game jams. I participated as a jammer on the very first global game jam in 2009. So, and one important thing to notice is that game jams are about jamming, are about having fun, building something, building a prototype. It's not necessary that you have some form of competition or not. So the first thing about approaching a game jam is that it's a friendly, have fun kind of event. And yes, when we have a sponsored jam, a jam that sometimes has a specific purpose and a specific category, it's cool as well to have prizes, especially offered by sponsors. But it's never like primarily about the competition. It's about jamming and creating games and having fun and learning on the whole process. And then that said, I have to say I liked a lot the categories that were put together. We comment a bit about them before. And the bots one is quite interesting, right? So before we get any new questions, what I wanted to comment about bots is the following. Um, People sometimes underestimate how fundamental bots are to multiplayer games. Whenever you launch a new title, it's very difficult for you to get new players into the game. So I'd like I've done so much math to think what needs to be, how many people you have to actually have playing your game every day to have the throughput on the matchmaking necessary to get people on the matches every 30 seconds or so. So it's a very challenging problem. People think, oh, I'm gonna get a 100 CU game and it's gonna be cool. It's very difficult because you need to have, let's say, if your match lasts for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, a 10-minute game, and you need to have 10 people into the game, it means that every 10 minutes you have to have more people coming all the time. And this is only in one region of the world, for example. So it's very challenging. So bots must exist for two or three reasons actually. First one is you need to have bots to fill in when you don't have enough players in your game. Of course, people want to play with other players, but if you have a game that requires 10 people, you may go with 4 players, 6 players, plus a few bots balanced between the teams to make the game fun, to make it start fast. Second reason to always have bots is you want your beginner players to win the matches. So many times you want them to play together in the same team with other players, but play against very easy difficulty bots on the very first matches. It's still an online game with actual people, but you put also bots in the mix to make it easier for them. Or if you're going to play a tutorial level of some sort, you must have bots to teach people how to play because they are going to play a bit like a player, a lot easier to deal with, but you need them for this reason. The third reason is sometimes people have issues and they disconnect. You want to make sure you at least have the option of having a bot to fill in not only at the beginning but when somebody disconnects. That's why it's so fundamental, and we talk so much about adding bots to multiplayer games, in my honest opinion. And that's why we have a category like that. Then let me speculate here. So best use of bots, I don't know. Maybe they're gonna judge the bots that play like players, or the bots that are creative, or maybe it's a game where you have bots that do things that players do not do. So a boss battle, a cooperative boss battle, and the boss has super nice AI playing there. That also. I think I cannot. I mean, please do not blame me if this is not count as a bot. For me, it is a bot when you have a boss that is driven by AI, right? So it's on that line. Let me see if we have extra comments. We don't have new questions yet. So that's Luke, do you want to comment on that, or maybe Charlie as well? I know it's not perhaps your main.
No, I mean the bot question is not my main thing, but the prizes is, so exactly like you said, like game jams are not necessarily about trying to get a prize, but more about experimenting. So if you've had an idea for a game and you've not had enough time or enough people around you to be able to do that, this is where a game jam comes in. You can experiment. It's very low. Um, the stakes are quite low. You know, you're not going to lose your job if, but you can play, and that's what it's about. But also another factor that is very, very important with game jams is its connection. It's meeting new people outside your peer group, and a lot of friendships have been formed through game jams as well. So that's a bigger prize, I guess.
I think
Totally
best use
agreed.
of bots, it can also apply to the type of game you're creating, right? So some games might need a bot to be played well, especially if someone wants to play your game alone, right? So if you create a two-player co-op puzzle game, then maybe you need a bot for the second player in case someone wants to play the game alone. So that would be a very good use of bots. And this also hits another point. Bots can be very, very useful for the development and testing of the game.
Mhm.
So when you want to test how does your game actually feel like in multiplayer, but you can't get a group of playtesters together, bots allow you to very easily check that out. Or if you're on into an issue, you can have a bot repeat that to debug and many other things. So bots are great tools. Every multiplayer game should have them. And we make them very, very easy with Quantum, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to comment on that topic uh, because you mentioned about quantum and fusion here. So with a quantum, we actually provide a complete um, bot SDK, and um, and it is important that we provide that because quantum is a deterministic engine, so bots have to run from within the simulation. Any NPC or AI that is gameplay related has to run from the simulation, and it's a great bot SDK. Then it's anybody who tried it likes it a lot. It's a very complete SDK. But then people sometimes ask, why don't we have the same for Fusion? The reason is that because Fusion is so much more integrated into Unity, it doesn't, because it's not determinism, it doesn't require you to write the game logic on a separate engine like Quantum. You can actually use, to a certain extent, asset store AI assets, and they would, with not a lot of modifications, probably work fine for what you want. So we didn't need to cover all that. But it's of course it's super welcome if people do let's say network design for network bot sorry AI assets and libraries. It will be super welcome. Um, like I've seen people already doing animation integration tooling is specific for Fusion. So people from the community is already doing that kind of thing, and it will be super welcome to do on AI. So we do not have our own. AI SDK for Fusion, because normally we don't need to. I think we have
Yeah,
a
we have
couple
a
of
new.
comments here.
Yeah, and quickly, another recent use case for bots was in our Fusion VR 200 sample, actually. So when we wanted to playtest this, can we actually get up to 200 players there? We used bots to help with that. So these were autonomous players interacting with Fusion and getting that player count up. And since we're talking about prices, that would also give you the ability to actually compete in the CCU category because each bot would still be a player in the end, right?
Okay.
I'll tackle the one from Khaled soon. But first, I'd like to comment on the CC0 assets. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if Charlie has something specifically about it, but I'll explain my understanding. So, uh, on a game jam, you are not providing the raw source project to anybody. You are uploading a binary game build. So you not only CC0, I think any asset you bought for yourself that allow you to have commercial use or put in your own projects. I mean, assets you buy, for example, from the Unity asset store or from other sources like 3D Squid or whatever. I think, from my legal understanding, you are allowed to use them in your builds. CC0 assets are even the license is even less restrictive because essentially lets you share them as part of sources you distribute, for example, in other assets. That's the difference here. But for the game jam, because you're going to be providing your game build, it doesn't even need to be CC0. It can be your own, can be CC0, or it can be paid assets that you legally acquired for your own use. That's
Yep.
my understanding.
No, absolutely. I think we agree with that, in that you're coming together in a team to create a game. You might not have an artist, you might not have the ability to create the assets. That's not a limitation. There are enough assets within Unity, within that you can purchase yourself that are free that you can use with permissions. So don't ever let these things limit you. That's where we come down from.
And I think one thing I saw Tim from the Global Game
I
Jam
So
mention.
let me tackle the question from Khaled here. Khaled, I'd like you to first please clarify to me what error is this? Because if you're, I assume you were talking about the BR200 Battle Royale sample made with Fusion. And I know you can have two different things you are talking about here. It may be our app ID, which is not called project ID. I believe when you talk about project ID, what you're talking about is the Unity Online Services project ID. And we cannot answer that because that service is provided by Unity. So hosting on multiplay and the technology, the SDK that lets you do that, build and but the server running from multiplay is not provided by us, it's provided directly by Unity. It's a Unity service. So if this question is if the error message is about the Unity Gaming Services project ID, you need to contact their support for them to assist you on that. But of course, they wrote a very extensive documentation for this in particular. That's part of the project that we reviewed, and we helped them to test everything together, and it does work if you follow all the instructions in there. But if you still have issues with the, I believe, project ID, which is related to Unity Gaming Services, you need to contact them, Unity. Just one more note on the topic. You do not need to use multiplayer hosting or Unity Gaming Services to run the Battle Royale sample. You can run it wherever you want, or you can even run on at home as a player hosted game, right? So it can work independently of the Unity Gaming Services directly, just with the existing setup there. It's actually in our documentation is how we recommend you to first test. Just put the app ID in, and play it, host the game yourself there without having to go the next step, which is building a dedicated server and pushing to Unity multiplayer hosting. That would be the next step. So I believe Project ID is related to Unity gaming services, which you will have to contact them if you cannot solve the problem by reading the instructions.
Also,
Hi, Meep.
I mean,
if you have a problem like this, like please always just post on our Discord, include a screenshot or like the error message. That really helps us to help you with the exact problem. It's a much better format for something like this. So yeah, we are active there, especially on the Photon Engine Discord and also the Global Game
yeah,
Jam Discord right now. Just ask, we're there to help.
absolutely. And on the Global Game Jam Discord, we have a dedicated set of conversation threads. And there is Ask an Organizer, which would be for one of the Game Jam, Global Game Jam members. But there's also Ask Photon, and that's where you're going to get your technical support.
Yes, we have a lot of people active there, so please
Mhm.
ask the questions. We're always looking to what's going on in there. Um, Luke, I think you can answer the next one.
Yes, we have one more question. The question is whether there are any plans to have a stream where we play the games that were built during the jam. And the answer to that is yes. So
Mhm.
we're going to have a play session later on this month where you can submit your games and the devs from Photon. So Eric, me, many of the other guys, we're gonna play your game. We're gonna give you live feedback. You can comment on how you implemented it, stuff like that. I think you, Eric, you're very interested in guessing whether a game is made in quantum or
Yeah,
fusion, right?
I don't want to follow too much the showcases channel, for example, because when it's going to be time for this stream, I want to play the game and try to guess if it's using quantum or fusion, just based on the way it plays. I'll try to see what is my score, what is the percentage of hits I have. Hi, welcome. So for those of you who joined later now, this is a AMA, Ask Me Anything kind of session here. So we're answering technical or not so technical, different questions about either the game jams in general,
Mhm.
Photon specifically, fusion and quantum mostly, but feel free to ask anything.
You can also ask anything about multiplayer in general. So if you want to know how we would implement something or how a certain game would be made or something like that, just throw it into the chat. We're here to help you guys out. Looks
That's a
like we
question
got
for
another
you.
Okay, we have a
question
technical one
about
now
host
and a few
migration.
other more. Um, okay, so should I answer the one about host migration?
Definitely, Eric. I think you're the
So
right person for that.
I'm not the right
so
person for that, so
yeah,
yes.
so let's go stake. So the way host migration works is the following. So you have a player hosted game. You don't need that in shared mode because the state is on the Photon cloud. Anybody can lay join and it's going to work. But if you have a player hosted game, so one of the players is the server. If you enable host migration, you can also set the frequency at which the game states are backed up into the Photon cloud. So that's one of the things host migration does. So your server is running the game, but it's also pushing a full copy of the network game state to our services, and we store it for you during the session. Then for host migration to kick in, of course, you have to have clients. You have one player being the host, and you have other working connected as clients. Host migration kicks in if the server, the current server, which is the host, the player who's the host, disconnects. If he disconnects, the Photon Cloud is going to elect one of the clients to be the new host. And what you do is you will immediately tell all of the clients, hey, there is a host migration that's going to happen. So, and one of the clients is going to be elected as the new host. For that one, uh, Photon is gonna the Photon Cloud is gonna send the actual last full copy of the game state that was stored in the cloud. And then from the perspective of that client who is the new host, you're going to get the on host migration callback called. From the perspective of the other clients, that is not called. They are just automatically sent a message to reconnect to the new client. If you take a look at I think we have a sample about it, Luke. Do you have it already? Do we have it already up, or are we holding it for the next minor update? I don't remember that.
Um, I think we have a technical sample for host migration. Yes.
Yeah, it's so if it's there already, let me double check. So I have the documentation open
Posted the
here.
link into the
You
chat.
posted the link.
So.
Okay, yeah. So that sample shows all these basic building blocks I talked about. But this is the condition at which host migration actually kicks in. The host disconnects. The Photon Cloud recognizes it. It takes, if you just drop the cable, it's going to take a few seconds for the Photon server to recognize that it's the regular timeouts. And then it will kick in host migration. So there are a lot of little things you have to do right. So restoring the game state works by like this. So actually, the new host is going to create a new runner as a new server, but you receive a copy of the old game state, so you can replicate them. You can respawn all the objects you had before as they last were stored in the cloud, because you receive a copy of that, and you can traverse all the old objects and respawn them, copying the components if you need to, so you have access to that. But yeah, you should take a look at the sample and see how it works. One final note on the topic is that we're going to improve that a lot on the next major version. So we recognize by using the API itself that there are improvements we can do with a few quality of life improvements. So that's going to come on the next one, but it's already functional. You can really host migrate with a little bit more work than it will be on the next versions, but it already works. So let's scroll here the next questions.
The next question is actually.
Are you guys gonna build
Charlie, do you
games?
want to take that one?
Well, I can't speak for you, Luke, but for myself, I wish I had the time. But I will be doing it in my own time as a little side hustle, maybe just having a little play, and learning how to use all this amazing tech that we're being given access to. But yeah, if I had time, I would make a game. What about you, Luke? Are you gonna?
Yep, I am. So I'm building a game. It's a VR shooter. So I have my VR headset here. I'm testing it out. I have this really cool idea. I don't think whether I have time to build it. So I'm not gonna spoiler you. You'll see whether I make
Okay,
it. I'm
nice.
also posting my progress in Showcase, and Eric is building something as well. And actually, you can find him live on Twitch.
Yeah, I'll stream tonight again. So it's on my private channel. I share the channel on our on the Gem Discord, but I'm not gonna promote it here. It's a private thing, so not related to Photon directly. Well, I do use Quantum, and I answer questions about Quantum in it, but I'm not gonna promote the link here. So question about like how do we promote your game in the community? That's a difficult question, right? So do you want to take that one, Charlie? It's really about, I don't know.
Do you need to promote? So it depends what you mean by need to promote your game within the community. So within the this event, so Global Game Jam and Photon together, there is a dedicated Discord, and within that Discord, there's a showcase, there's a work in progress, and you can use that for promotion. Obviously, as Luke said, as we get a little bit further down the line, there are going to be live playthroughs as well. But show people, share it, talk about it, get excited about it, have people excited by what you're creating. That's the best way, I think. But you don't need necessarily to do that. But always, and this comes back to feedback, getting feedback on your game is so vital, because you may love a game, but your target audience may not quite like it, or they may not quite get your vision. So this is where feedback and promotion is really, really essential. But use the Discord, use the community that we've built there, and feel free to reach out to the Global Game Jam organizers, the Photon organizers, that we can offer this sort of feedback.
Luke, I want to take some very quickly here because I can answer like this, so I don't stay too long on them. So, which system is best for three-dimensional play with dynamic physics objects? If it's a lot of physics objects that you actually interact and that you need them to be in real-time, quantum, no question. Next, by fix. Does a network dictionary in Fusion with a capacity of 1,000 uses more network traffic than a network dictionary with a capacity of 10 when they have both only 5 objects added? They use exactly the same. So fill the capacity as big as you need. Fusion only transmits actual data that changed bit by bit. So even if you have an array and you filled in the first element and the last element, only that data that changed is actually transmitted. Everything in between did not change, is not transmitted. So if you have something like, oh, I changed the values of a few of the objects in the array, only those are transferred, not the full array. So go for 1,000.
And this also applies to basic types. That's something if someone comes from another library, right? So whether you use an int or new long, Fusion is going to use the same bandwidth. It really just depends on the actual number and whether it changes.
Yeah. It's essentially every 32 bits. It's what we check if it changed or not. So your own types, your own structures, it's really the bits that change that is actually transferred. So from forest games with Quantum, how can we use after the jam? So Quantum will be released for free forest games. So just be patient after the jam. We don't know exactly how long it will take, but it will not be long. I mean, we're preparing this whole documentation and all these samples that are available for the jammers is actually exactly the same. That's going to be free for everyone to develop. After the jam, how big the gap is, could be 0, could be 1 week, could be a few weeks, couple of months. We don't know exactly. Hopefully, almost nothing. Okay, but we can't promise. We can't give the exact ETA. But in essence, yes, you will be able to develop with Quantum after the jam as soon as we release it. It's not going to take long. So just to fix with Stake about the 30-second interval thing. Fusion sends an initial state right away. So if you spawn the game with some initial network objects, that is immediately transferred to the cloud. And then the next one goes in 30 seconds. So if you have a lot of spawns in between, they're going to go on the second, which is going to be in 30-second interval. But there is a first one that's sent immediately as well. There is another way for you to force send on important events. This is rate limit. You cannot kick this all the time, but ask on Discord. Ramon can give you the link, the API that you can use to force. For example, after you spawn all the players, you can force send and snapshot to the Photon cloud. I'm gonna take the questions by Isaac later. So about NX Go, Photon is very convenient to use, that's for sure, but there is also some problems so with synchronization and twitches. I believe because you're referring Photon, which is a company, I believe you're talking about Photon Pun, which is our most popular product, which is now legacy. It's not anymore in active development. Fusion and Quantum do not have synchronization problems. They are best-in-class networking tick-accurate solutions. So I believe you were talking about the legacy technology. So,
and if you have twitches or lags or jitter in Fusion, then often that's due to aliasing. So whether you write your game code at the correct place. So for gameplay code, that's fixed update network for Fusion. So everything should go in there. But then for something which is related to rendering, for instance, updating your camera's position to follow the player, that would go into render or late update. And if you get those wrong, then you will have some noticeable jitter. That's a very common mistake people make.
I have a question by Ludo, which is the best way to create spring joints during gameplay with Photon? Again, I think he's referring to Pun. The answer is use Quantum or use Fusion. Definitely not an RPC. Spring joints mean physics, so you need physics to feel local. So you need a tick accurate system. So you have to either use Fusion or Quantum for that. I would recommend Quantum for anything that's a super physics-based gameplay. It's free to develop for the jam. You should definitely take a look at the doc and use what is available that's best now. Oh, in Fusion. Okay, definitely. I mean, in Fusion, you could be doing client server mode or shared mode. For anything physics, it has to be client server mode for better results. So I would use client server mode running the physics on the server. You would not have problems. You just have the joints there. They're going to work. Whereas you want to use physics prediction, that's another story, right? So we discussed a lot about that on the previous stream. If you wanna perhaps tune in and watch the video of the previous stream where we discussed a lot of between determinism and state transfer. We talk a lot about that topic. I would like not to repeat again this, but uh, if you have physics stuff, normally it is better to use quantum. Um, can Unity joint components be used with Fusion? Yes, they can. Is it from Victory Toad here? So yes, they can. Fusion uses so server-side only, Ludo. Just have the joints there. You don't need RPCs at all. Oh, them. You almost never need RPCs in Fusion, especially in client server mode. I don't know why people try to use RPCs so much. Don't use RPCs. RPCs are only for if the client says, "Oh, I want to use this weapon. Server, please equip me with this weapon." If it's not something that you trigger and got from the gameplay, because then it's all on the server. I'm saying at the beginning of the game, you're selecting stuff from a menu and say, I want to play with this. You send an RPC to the server asking the server to spawn. But anything during gameplay based on a trigger, so it's all done on the server. The server transfers the state. So spring joints, just have them sorted. There is no RPC needed for that at all. So Unity joints, same answered. Although again, I would use quantum if you have joints and physics. One note about what Ludo said. He's saying server side only. Um, that works nicely. So if you run Fusion Physics, which is PhysX, on the server and interpolate the physics on every client, that looks very butter smooth, and it should work flawlessly out of the box. The server only moves forward; it never rolls back. So it's safe to use any regular Unity joint, and it should work out of the box. The only caveat I say is that if your physics game needs a lot of predict rollback, PhysX is expensive at that, and then you may want to take a look at quantum if you require that. But running server only physics with any kind of joint, it's no problem. Uh, I skipped a couple. Luke, do you want to take anything
Yeah,
here? I'm
we
scrolling a
have
couple.
another question by Skybreaker, which is, what would be the best way to implement NPCs or AI without using the bots SDK? So that's just general advice for how to implement that, I guess.
Wow, that's a broad question, right? So when we say bot SDK in our case, that's specific to Quantum. It is essentially an AI SDK to run with Quantum because the Quantum is the gameplay engine when you're using Quantum. But that's also very generic. I mean, what do we have implemented in the bot SDK? In the stable version, we have Blackboard, hierarchical finite state machines, and behavior trees. If you just think about behavior trees and hierarchical finite state machines, they are, let's say, equally capable, but there are two different approaches for implementing game AI. Some people like one, some people like the other. So what we do is we offer the different ways for you to choose. What is the best? Some of it is personal preference. Some of it depends on which part of the bot we're trying to do. Is it the tactical reasoning about the AI? Is it like steering AI for the bot? This is a very, very broad question. AI is a very, very big topic. You can read books the rest of your life just on that topic, or write books about it. There are great game AI books, for example. But and these are just on the stable version of the bot SDK. Then on the internal development version accessible for Gaming Circle, we have goal-oriented action planning, which became famous with the game Fear, applied to games, right? It's a planning technique. Then we also have utility theory functions in development. So, but this is for our bot SDK. Then you ask, without using the bot SDK, if you're using Quantum, it's always better to take a look at the bot SDK, but of course you can roll your own stuff. If you're using Fusion, you can use whatever you want. Perhaps you use behavior designer, which is a famous asset for behavior trees on the Unity Asset Store. Run that on the server only, and you should have your decisions made. But on the technical side, I would use one of those as libraries, but I would make sure, for example, for movement code to be applied from the Fusion callbacks, so it will be actually tick accurate as well. So I would use the AI to make the decisions, but the AI library you use that is not designed for online multiplayer, running on the server only in case of Fusion, but the actual movement, I would run it from the fixed update network call, so it will be accurate. But then again, it depends on what you're trying to do, which type of AI structures and algorithms you're going to use, right? So it really depends on what you're doing.
Did we get to fix the question about network dictionaries in Fusion?
I did. I answered it.
Excellent.
I do have synchronizing. So Sky Breaker.
That
What was the
was
question?
that was the question you just answered about the bots. I guess it was about how
Oh,
to
okay.
synchronize
How
the
to
AI.
synchronize. So if it's Quantum bot SDK, you don't have to do, but without the bot SDK, right? So if it's in Quantum, you write AI in the simulation. Do not write AI on the clients. That's not the way to do. You write the AI on the simulation in Quantum. How do you synchronize? You don't have to. It's automatically synchronized because it's deterministic. In Fusion, how do you implement AI and synchronize it? Honestly, I would not synchronize a lot of the data about AI. I would run the AI on the server only, like I was describing, and I would only synchronize really the data needed for networking, the transform, the weapons and things you have. There are a few exceptions. I mean, if your movement systems are like click to go and you have a very predefined way of doing, perhaps you also want to synchronize the target, the final target, and you want to have some local steering also happening with a local nav mesh. That really depends on the different use cases, but in my opinion, running state transfer Fusion, I would not synchronize a lot of stuff about AI because you do not need to predict AI. Run the AI on the server only. Normally, you do not need to predict a lot of AI. Book recommendations, game AI. I think I do have one that I recommend. I'm gonna search it soon. So
When it comes to bots or AI in Quantum, also, you really can keep in mind that Quantum does not need to transfer the state, so you can have any amount of bots AI. So it's great for an RTS kind of game. The limitation is really how expensive your AI is. So, for instance, if you have an RTS game, pathfinding can be very expensive when you do it for every single unit. So you would use a flow field instead. But the only limitation is really how well you can optimize your AI.
so just to finish here, perhaps we should write on the chat, Luke. So the games I like about so my favorite one is Artificial Intelligence for Games by Ian Millington and John David Funge. That's my favorite. And the other one that I know is very good. It's Game AI Pro. Then you have plenty of other good books, but the two I really like are these two. They are very good introductions to the several techniques.
I think the question might also just be generic for multiplayer books.
Generic multiplayer books. I do have a recommendation. Almost none. A lot of the good knowledge on multiplayer is not on books. There are a couple which are good, but I've seen some people recommend me them, but it was I didn't feel confident in everything that was there. Some information was outdated. Some of them were just focusing on explaining tools and not really the techniques, which is the kind of books I like. So I will not talk about any of them here, neither good or bad. I just don't have any recommendation on
It is
multiplayer
really
in general.
hard to find something that tackles the issues of real-time multiplayer as it's solved with fusion and quantum. One book I like though is from IT Hare, and it's called Development and Deployment of Multiplayer Games. And the reason why I like it is because it speaks a lot about the operation side of creating a multiplayer game. So it's not about development, how do I implement this feature, but more about what actually goes on behind the scene, what else is there to consider for a launch. So I would definitely recommend that to you if you plan to go into production with a multiplayer game.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. I mean, operation of it, you have both technical sides, but and you also have like how do you deal with the community? How do you deal with the amount of people trying to play? Uh, One thing I can tell you is that's gonna save you a lot of headaches about operations of multiplayer games. Is one, have bots, because without bots you're going to get player starvation, and you're going to get all those Steam reviews saying, oh, the servers are dead, there is nobody to play, oh, the game is good but nobody plays, negative review. Well,
Mm.
put bots, that helps solve that so much. Because, and the second thing is on your matchmaking have two ways to play the game. Way number one, press play and go into a quick match. Fill in with bots if needed, but all, of course, get some actual players in. After you have more players, you will not need to fill with bots. They will automatically be filled only with players. That's one button. Second button is the option for you to create a private game. You don't need to create a complex system to find friends and send invites. Come on, it's 2022. Everybody uses Discord, WhatsApp, whatever they need. You don't need voice chat unless you can. It's cool to have. We do have Photon voice, but you don't need. First thing you should do is let the person create a private game themselves with a random 5, 6 letter code that they can just copy and paste to their friends. Their friends join that game, and then you either open it to other people to join, or you just start with the friends. Day one, launch the game with these two. Do not launch a game without the second. You don't need the complex friend system, just the thing with the letter that people can share and play together. That's gonna save you a lot of negative reviews. I tell you by looking at all the games I've been following the launches over the past 7 years. I have one from Fix.
Mhm.
Is it possible for Photon Fusion to spawn a network object as a child as another network object? Yes, it is, although I do not recommend that. Hierarchies are overrated. So Unity is the engine that brought hierarchies for everything. For example, in Unreal, you do have parenting and you do not have parenting. You can choose to use hierarchies or not. And when it comes to networking, parenting becomes complicated. It really depends on what you want to do. But yes, Fusion does support nested prefabs and even spawning a network object with another one internally, and it does work, it does spawn. But managing the network, the parenting, and yeah, if you move on the server only, the parent, yeah, it's gonna transfer the child correctly. Don't worry about bandwidth. We deal with all that. It's actually gonna transfer the world space position, but only on change, and we resolve with local space on the other side anyway. The point is, it may become complex for you to deal with it depending on what you're trying to do. I've seen people try to do a rigid body inside another body and moving. That's against the rules of the physics engine itself, physics. It's not something you should do even on a single player game. I mean, does it break? No, it doesn't crash the game, but it creates undesired behaviors even in single player. So I do not recommend you to do that, for example, especially on multiplayer, but you can do, yeah.
And when it comes to parenting at runtime, what you need to keep in mind is that if you want that to work for every client, so if you want to reparent during runtime, that needs to be part of the networked state. So network
Yeah.
transform doesn't do that for you. You will need a networked property and reference the parent and make sure that is handled by your code.
Yes, so Jaruska answered fix with what I would suggest, which is something I commented on the previous stream as well. So if you want to have turrets, you just store the data for a transform, a rotation and an offset, and you compute manually. I would not even create a separate networked object to be the turret, unless you need to despawn it separately. I would make it part of the actual game, not part of the actual view, and use this offset to compute the shooting origins. You don't need to make that a separate networked object. And the same goes with quantum. You do not have to have that view the view can be on the Unity hierarchy, but it doesn't have to exist as a separate entity, the turret. You can, you don't need to. So yeah.
Also, we do have full support for nested prefabs. So if you want to have multiple turrets on your spaceship, you can have a turret prefab with all the network behaviors and collider it needs to function. And then you can just put that on your network object, on your spaceship, anywhere you want. And that's just going to work fine.
I will answer what is an interesting question by Stake here. Do you guys think Photon Fusion is the best networking solution in the world? I'll answer very honestly. First, no. Quantum is equally good. They are two different solutions for different ways of solving, and they're both state of the art and very good. And then, before people start to crucify me, are they the only very good networking solutions in the world? No. You have absolutely excellent netcode stuff being done by excellent developers out there, especially on in-house teams. I'll mention a few guys from from Riot that worked on Valorant. The guys from Blizzard worked on Overwatch. The deterministic solutions by the guys from Overwatch, from Blizzard from the other series of games like Heroes of the Storm, StarCraft. Those are deterministic. These are great solutions that they have. The the Valve solution for Counter-Strike and Dota 2. These are great netcode solutions. Brawlhalla, I believe Brawlhalla has something similar to Quantum in-house for their platform fighter. Excellent netcode. Rocket League, obvious example of great netcode. It is interesting because I would totally do something like Rocket League now that Quantum exists. I'll totally do it in Quantum, but they did it with state transfer, with dedicated servers, and they took a long time to develop that, and they nailed it. So they do proper predict rollback with local physics. It's a simpler game. It's amazing gameplay, but it's simpler in terms of the amount of physics objects that are on screen. And they modified heavily the physics engine to be able to do predict rollback fast enough. I think it's Bullet, the physics engine they use it, if I'm not mistaken. But it's everything custom in-house. These are great solutions. And but on Unity land, I don't see anything even to compare with Fusion and Quantum. Sorry. I know the Unity netcode for entities has some good principles, but that's not even stable or production ready or anything like that. So we cannot say anything. It had good principles. So I know there are very good guys on that team working really well. But available for you to use for Unity, no, nothing is. I can see that's better than that. There are some interesting ones coming up now with trying to be based on what bolt was and trying to get to tick accuracy. It's interesting to see that happening, right? So a lot of people are waking up for what makes high accurate multiplayer. I hope this helps answer the question. So there is a question about matchmaking works with Unity now. So, uh, but before I answer the question, Charlie, thank you so much thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to leave a message for everybody watching us now?
Well, thank you first off for having me and putting up with my non-tech knowledge. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about all the games and seeing, and also more importantly, playing the games that you've created. Yeah, I cannot wait. So thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Luke, and thank you to everyone here for putting up with me.
Thank you for joining us, Charlie. See
Okay,
you next
Yeah,
time.
bye-bye.
thank you, Charlie.
Bye.
Um, I believe you can. Thank you, Luke. So I have two interesting questions from Forest Games. I want to tackle both of them, right? So first, about how matchmaking works with Unity now. First, we've had room-based matchmaking since more than 10 years ago, which works really well for games that go all the way to 1 million CCU like Stumble Guys. So now you have we've always also be friendly for you to use any matchmaking you like. So for example, normally I recommend you doing the random matchmaking directly with us and the create a named room for your friends to join with you. But nothing blocks you from running either your own backend that you make players together, and then basically you send them a unique ID for a session or game, and then that works. You can use that to create and join the sessions on our backend. So we are 100% agnostic and friendly to you using external matchmaking. That can be your own backend, that can be a tournament backend, like we also offer, that can be PlayFab matchmaking, that can be the new Unity matchmaking. What is new now is that Unity is offer Unities. This is not us, but I'm going to answer partly because we work together with them a bit. But of course, you have other vendors doing something similar. But they now have the self-serve option for multiplayer, for hosting the servers, for dedicated server gaming. And when you want to use dedicated server gaming, that must be very tight with the matchmaking. And they are also offering a matchmaking solution. So it's similar to what you have in other vendors that provide you matchmaking and hosting. So you can get this from Unity. And this is what the BR200 sample shows you. But technically, you can use any other matchmaking you want. And we are friendly to that. If you have detailed technical questions, you can send us questions over email or join our Discords for that. The next one also from Forest. Are there good examples of in Quantum for kill cam replays and replays of entire game sessions? The thing is, kill cam replays in Quantum are built in. You have a script there that lets you attach it to a game object. It lets you call one function to say, oh, rewind, play the last 10 seconds again, and you even set the speed. I want to see it in like half the speed, so you see in slow motion over 20 seconds. The script is there. Normally you wanna switch the camera when you do it, but essentially we run over the same scene. We run the replay game, reshowing it. It's built in. It's one function call. So if there is a good example, it's part of the built-in SDK. It's called replay runner, and you can use it with one method to use it for kill cam. For full match replays, you have to configure the session to store the full input history, and you can save that and play at any time. You can even do it outside of Unity on a .NET console application. So Many games use it just to start starting from these scripts we provide with the raw SDK. So we we haven't done a lot of sampling for that because there is not really have been any need for it because it's so easy to access them. Um, would there be a Photon plus gem planned in the future? Well, it's happening now. Why think about the future? We're still on it. So I don't know. I don't know if there will be another one, perhaps. But it's happening now.
Like according to our company policy, we don't provide ETAs, so we can't say
Same
for
for
sure.
same
But
for a gem, right?
there's definitely gonna be more community events, more stuff going on. We're
Yeah.
sticking around. So yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, you can expect us to, even without the gem, to stream more or less regularly with new content and new stuff that we're developing and releasing. We're gonna always be talking about it now with streams and these Q&A sessions. So let's see. We're working a lot on that particular topic. So if not a specific game jam, but reach out, events like this are gonna happen more and more. I think it's
So
time for
have we
us to
made
wait
it?
for the. Yeah, I think we can get our last questions if there are some still. And
Yep,
let's
last
see.
chance to ask any questions for today. We're gonna have other Q&A sessions, I think next week, Friday as well. So there's gonna be another chance to ask even more questions.
So I'll answer both questions we have here. So for Victory Toad, uh, both. So our Discord has a showcase channel. The Global Game Jam Discord has a showcase channel, even specific to the multiplayer Global Game Jam. So feel free to post on all of these or anywhere else you want, right? But you're super welcome to do on both our showcase and the Global Game Jam showcase, the Discords. Question from Skybreaker76 as well. So, is there any way to check if there's no CCU left with Fusion? I believe I would like you to ask this question also on our Discord, but I believe you can actually check what is the current CCU count. I'm not so sure, but I think you can ask what's the current CCU on a region, on one specific region. And the other important thing I'd like to mention is CCU limitation only exists on the very basic plans, like the 20, I think it's the 20 and the 100 CCU plans. As soon as you actually launch a game and you start to actually make money with it and your game crosses that boundary, so 100 CCU is difficult to get. People think it's easy to get 100 CCU. It's not. You need to have a lot of copies sold or downloaded for you to reach 100 CCU. But once you cross that barrier and you have to start with 500 CCU, 1000 CCU plans, we do not block CCU anymore. We give you some elasticity with burst CCUs. And what happens is, if there is something and your game suddenly becomes super popular because of a streamer and it jumps from 2000 CCU to 10,000 CCU, is it going to stop working? No, just congratulations. You're going to reach a super large audience and probably your game is getting a lot more revenues. So, of course, at the end of the month, you are now using 10K CCU. You have to discuss with us, but we're not going to block your players. So if you have if you want to answer more details about what I just said, send an email, please, and the guys from business side can explain you everything, how this works. This has never become a problem for anybody who actually launched the game and it becomes successful, right? So it's a common misconception that pricing is a problem or expensive. It's quite contrary.
Anti-scaling is really a major feature that we can
Yeah.
offer with the cloud. We can support thousands of CCU. In total, there are millions of CCU running on the cloud. So we can really scale your game up. Like the last thing you want is launching your games and having trouble with your network infrastructure, your game servers, right? That can kill your game. that's something the cloud can handle really well. So we have automatic scaling for that. It's just gonna work. So I think we're through for the questions today.
I think so. If we don't have any last, very, very last minute question, let's say this is the last one. And I'd like to thanks everyone for joining. We've got very good questions as well, again. And so thank you so much for everyone who was watching and especially asking the questions. And Luke, it's back with you.
Yeah, and thank you so much as well, Eric, for having you on the stream. You have helped so many people here with great answers. We're gonna be live again on Monday with a development session for Fusion, and then on Tuesday for Quantum, and then on Friday we're gonna do another QA. So stay tuned. There is much more coming. Yes. So have a very nice day, everyone.
Very
See ya.
nice evening for you guys in Europe like me and Luke as well, right? So see you guys next time.